we're rolling. Cool. What's going on, everybody? It's Jordan here. Welcome to our squad. I believe this is episode 116. Episode 116. Today we are concluding our mental health series, and you're in for a special treat. I have my friend Randy Boley here. Randy, you doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
Thank you for being here. Guys, it's going to be a great night, so get your notes out. You're going to want to take some notes down. If you want to go back and watch this later, you're certainly able to do so. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump into it. Randy, for those of you who may not know you, can you tell us in 60 seconds, I know, that's a lot, 60 seconds, who are you? Maybe something you like to do. Tell us about your family, and then what do you do, your job?
All right. So, like I said, I'm Randy. You guys all know my better half, Paul, also known as Off the Wall Paul. We have two adorable pups that we love doing all outdoor activities with. We are expecting our first baby.
Congratulations.
In July. Yeah, almost 10 and a half weeks to go, so we're almost there.
Crazy.
Yeah, I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I work at Agape Counseling in Wilmington.
Awesome.
So that's where I'm at, yeah.
Awesome. What's something that you like to do other than hang out with your dogs? Something like random.
So, so I'm new into gardening.
Gardening.
So, like my old soul is coming out. But we just planted some vegetables. I just planted some succulents and different things. So that's where I'm at in life right now.
Hey, I'm with it. That's what Lauren has been really into lately. The succulents. We got plants all over our house.
I feel like it's growing.
It's fine. It's good for you. It helps you breathe. You know, some
I get
stuff
outside,
like that.
get some sunshine that way.
So you are a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Yes.
Why, out of all the things that you could do, did you choose to go into therapy and counseling? Can you tell us a little bit about how you got connected with that world?
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, as long as I can remember, I've always been a helper. I've always wanted to help others, serve others, whatever that looked like. It wasn't until my last semester of college, actually, that I panicked and was like, I have no idea what I want to do in life. And I recently, in that semester, learned about therapy. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a small town. Therapy was not a thing that we talked about. You didn't really talk about mental health or anything. So I learned about it through the program that was in the department that I was going to school in. And so I applied for the program and went to grad school. Long 2 years of my life. But during that 2 years, I just felt really called, even though it's marriage and family therapy, I just felt called to the family aspect of it. And through my internship, I started working with children and adolescents of childhood trauma. So a lot of physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional, domestic violence, a lot of different things. And I just fell in love with it. That's where my heart and soul is, and God very much laid that out for me. So I just stuck there, and I love working with kids. I love working with teens and their families. And
awesome. Yeah, no, I love it. So you work with middle schoolers, you work with high schoolers. I mean, you work with everybody,
I work
but
with everyone,
specifically you work with some middle schoolers and some high schoolers who's watching this video. So let's talk just a little bit about some of the basics. Like, tell us a little bit about mental health. Why is it such a big deal with middle school and high schoolers? Can you tell us a little bit about some of the symptoms, some of the effects, just maybe a basic kind of overview and understanding of what is mental health and why is it impacting so many middle schoolers and high schoolers?
Yeah, absolutely. Because life is crazy.
It's a good start. Yeah.
Looking back now, being a middle schooler and a high schooler is really hard. That's probably, honestly, like the hardest part of life. You're learning a lot about yourself. You're learning a lot about life in general. You're learning about your family. Like, you're experiencing a lot of different things at that point in life. And so I think that alone is a struggle. And then you add in just our world, social media, the pandemic, you know, like unexpectedly a pandemic, things like that, where you're going to struggle and you're going to struggle with who you are in life, because you're already struggling with that on top of life experiences and traumas and different things like that.
For sure. So what are some of the symptoms that you start to notice or see in middle schoolers and in high schoolers who are walking through anxiety, depression, some things like that? Is there anything that like really jumps out? Or
Yes, so usually sleep patterns and eating patterns change, whether that's sleeping or eating more. It could be sleeping or eating less. That's usually like a first sign that something's going on. Our sleep is interrupted, our eating is interrupted. You start having physical symptoms, headaches, even like heart issues can be a huge sign. Stomach issues are hugely connected to anxiety. And just having like that constant stomach ache, or even like serious GI issues, being in the hospital can very much be because of anxiety and depression, and they're all very interlinked.
We chose to spend some time talking about mental health. We know that this is very complex and complicated, and there's so much to discuss, and it can be hard to put it all, into short form videos, but we're going to do our best. And one of the things that I've hoped has come across in the series so far is just us being willing to talk about the hard things, and even for people who aren't necessarily dealing with this personally, for them to be able to understand that even if they're not dealing with it, good chances that there's people around them and close to them who are walking through some tough things. And I think there's a lot of just confusion around, like, am I just stressed out, or do I have like anxiety, or you know what I mean? Like, there's just a lot of confusion around it. And so definitely everybody watching this video, we're not trying to say, yeah, you have like a mental health issue. How can we better understand some of the confusions and like nuances that are a part of it?
Yeah, no, I think we sometimes naturally just want answers, and we want, like, not that we want the label, but it makes more sense if we have the label, and that's not necessarily what we need. Some of us can be really stressed, and then some of us can have like an anxiety disorder and struggle with an anxiety disorder. And that looks different for every single person. The way I experience anxiety may be totally different than how you would experience anxiety.
Right.
So it really depends on the person.
I know personally when I have like something unexpected that comes up, whether that's a health thing or a job thing or whatever it is, it's always like, okay, let's like define the problem, because then we can figure out how to overcome, right? And if you can't define it, you're kind of like in this weird limbo of like, I don't know what to do, And so I think that even that is good. It's like, well, we might be tempted to like self-diagnose maybe, or like say, hey, yeah, this is what I have, because then there's people who've shown that these are like the things I can do to overcome that. Do you see like self-diagnosis, or like what does that look like?
I'm also guilty of that. Yes, no, very much self-diagnosis, and that's one thing in therapy that, and you've talked about this in your videos, of we sometimes take that on as our identity and who we are, and especially if we've been somewhere that we actually get that diagnosis, it's just like, oh, well, then that makes sense. I'm just anxious, whatever, this is my life. When in reality, that's not it. Like, we are struggling with anxiety and depression and all of these stressors, but these aren't who we are. They don't make up us as a person and our identity. But the more that we struggle with them, the more that we internalize that, the easier it is to be like, oh, I'm just an anxious person. Like, that's it. I can't do anything about it.
Right.
And so that becomes the bigger issue, because then you feel like you can't separate yourself from that.
For sure.
But once you can separate yourself from that, it's like a whole different perspective of like, I can handle this. I can, whatever the struggle is, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whatever that, it can be anything. It's not who we are, but we try to take it on as who we are, because that makes more sense sometimes.
Yeah. So Randy, what would you say to a student who's watching this right now, and they might find it interesting or insightful, but they're not personally battling with depression right now, and they're taking this in, they're listening to the interview, and they're not really sure what to do with all of the information? What would you say to them?
Yeah, so I would say this is all incredibly important information for them to know, that they probably still have stressors in their lives, but they may not experience the severity as other people do with anxiety and depression. But the importance of knowing all this and even having these conversations is to help others, because we tend to, more than we think, show how we're feeling. We may say things here or there. We may catch up on things that our friends say, or like maybe they're not posting as much, or I haven't heard from this friend in so long, but typically I hear from this friend every day, or whatever that looks like. So essentially it's giving them the tools to be able to help someone else that is in need, and what to do with that information. And so I always say, like, if you see something, say something. So if we have friends that are posting suicidal things, or even just like something that's definitely off, of either talking to them directly or talking to an adult that is in their lives that can help them, somebody that can give them the support that they need, because if you just let that go, essentially that could end tragically. And I know we had this conversation before, that there's this fear of, well, if I snitch on my friend, then they're going to be mad at me. And it's like, do you want them to be mad at you, or I'm going to be real with you? Do you want them to not be here tomorrow?
Right.
Like, you know, they're going to be mad. Yeah. Like, sure, they're going to be mad because you call them out on how they're feeling. But essentially you could be saving their lives, or you could be keeping them from self-harming, or just being that support that they thought they didn't have.
Let's talk a little bit about this past year and a half, whatever it's been at this point since we've been dealing with the COVID pandemic. I know that mental health was already a huge concern before 2020. There was a lot going on. There were a lot of students and people in general who were struggling. Then we throw the global pandemic into the mix. We've got isolation. We've got all the things that come with that, and are still kind of working through just a lot of weirdness surrounding the effects, and probably will be dealing with the effects of it for quite some time. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you've seen as far as some of the effects and challenges that the past year has presented to students, and how that plays into the mental health conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. I have actually seen it as young as my elementary kids that I see all the way up through my college kids, because a lot of things change for all those developmental stages. Everyone experienced it differently. So the biggest thing, anxiety and depression, has like skyrocketed through everyone in our office is seeing more teens, more anxiety, more depression. The isolation piece has been huge. I think the number one I would say is school, definitely, just because you went from being with people, being with your friends, being with a teacher teaching you things in classrooms, to having to figure out all these things online on your own. Most parents still had to work, so kids were at home doing it on their own. I would have personally probably failed out of classes, because I am not that's not how I learn. That's how a lot of students don't learn. And then you have all of your assignments in front of you, and that alone can be so anxiety inducing of you got to get all these things done. But when you're in school, you don't necessarily look at it that way. It's not in your face every day, all the time. So that is very anxiety inducing, still is, because kids still aren't fully in school back yet. The depression piece, the isolation of just, now you can't go anywhere, you can't see anyone, you can talk to your friends through your phone, but it's not the same as sitting in class with them, hanging out with them at lunch, whatever that looks like at school. But then also the struggle of being at home all the time, with your parents or your siblings or whoever lives in your household, that is a stressor, because then you're around each other way more than we want to be sometimes. Our parents are also trying to juggle and figure this out. So relationships with our parents, or whoever our guardians are, that's a struggle.
There was no college class on how to handle the pandemic.
How to do a pandemic, very much so. So the isolation piece became huge. And then one thing of that, and we had talked about it earlier, was the perspective of you're not getting to do normal teen kid things anymore. You don't get to go to the movies with your friends, or you go out and just hang out at your friend's house or wherever. You don't get to just go out and do public things with your friends, get in trouble and learn life lessons from getting in trouble. All of those normal middle school teenage experiences have been taken away unexpectedly, and we don't know when that's going to end. That's the scary part too. Or the fear-inducing part is that we don't know when we're going to get that back. And so essentially, their development has been interrupted. That's where teenagers thrive, and where middle schoolers thrive is with their friends and figuring out life and fun things and getting in trouble and all those things, and they're not getting
it's all a part of it.
That's how we grow and learn, and all of that has been taken away.
That phrase, development has been interrupted, is sticking with me, because I think that helps just paint a nice picture for anyone watching this. Middle school, high school, parent, whatever it is development has been interrupted, and there's a lot of experiences that need to take place in order for any human in person to develop. And we throw so much uncertainty into the mix of interrupted development, and you get this concoction that leads to a lot of fear and worry. And I'm certainly seeing that, not in just in students, but in a lot of people as well. But I think specifically related to middle school and high schoolers, I've felt this sense of students feeling like maybe the future that they had planned out or had dreamed for themselves, oh no, that is not going to become a reality. Or there's going to be so many different things that have been thrown my way that maybe I'm not going to be able to do the thing that I wanted to do, as we've seen family members lose jobs and be sick, and just all of the things that have come with that for ourselves and for the families of our friends as well. And I can just only imagine what it's like to be in ninth grade, right? And to be seeing all this stuff happen and how that's changing me
Very much.
into, well, now I'm seeing the uncertainty, what can be certain in my own life. And maybe a little bit of like overcompensation for what I can go to for like a source of stability, or what can I go to for something that I know is going to be there for me, whether it's a healthy behavior or thing or not. And is there anything that you've noticed is sort of trending in habits or hobbies or things that students have like picked up as a way to cope with everything that's going on in this, like students or families that you're working with? Like, how are students responding or trying to respond to the challenges that have been presented?
And they're gonna hate my answer, but their phones, like through social media, because that's literally all they had. Like, we are on your computer all day. You're gonna get distracted. When your computer is where you do your schoolwork, that's also where social media is. Or your phone is literally right there, where it's a little bit different in school when, you know, you might get told to put your phone away or whatever. But now, like, their whole lives are on their phones. Whether that's connections with friends, that's connections through social media, people they don't even know, like finding validation from people they don't even know, when that's not the validation that they need in that time, but that's where it is, because that's where every other teenager is right now in life. They're all on the internet, but so are also a lot of scary people are on the internet as well, and so they're seeking that out, and so their validation is unfortunately coming from online, which everyone can be perfect and happy online, and everyone can portray this great image, but that's, you know, they could be having behind the scenes these huge struggles, and you know, with suicide and depression and self-harm and just all these different, their own struggles that you could have no idea, but then they're telling you, you know, giving you this validation and different coping skills. And that's, so I know that's not what they want to hear, but that's where it's at.
I think we saw the best and worst of what social media can do. We lose connection and physical interaction. Oh, but I can still see my coworkers, and I can still see my family, and we can still talk, which is like, I mean, we just couldn't do that without Zoom and without Instagram and some of those other things. But you also see the worst side of it, which is, oh, I've been on my phone for 10 hours today.
That's actually, I've had this conversation with I have a 16-year-old boy that I see, and I've had this exact conversation with him, that he's like, it's midnight and I've been on my phone all day, and he doesn't want to be, but he's to this point where he's like, I don't know how to put it down. He has told me that, like, I don't know how to put it down. And so that has also become a huge issue, is just almost an addiction to the phone of like, and Paul and I have talked about this, of like, I'm going to miss out on something if I put it down for 5 seconds, because that's the only connection that they have right now. And I know that things are opening back up, but I mean, that's still ultimately their life right now, where they're getting
still there,
any kind of connection. And so it's like, all day long I've been at home, either on my computer or my phone, and here it is midnight, and I'm still like, I can't put it down. I need to go to bed. I know I need to go to bed. I recognize this is an issue, but I can't, because then what if I miss something the next day?
Oh, that's a nasty trap right there that I think all of us can fall prey to for sure.
Absolutely.
So let's go in this direction of students who want to know what's next. What do I do? I feel like I may be struggling a little bit, whether that's just with needing to incorporate some better habits of dealing with some of the worry, or maybe it's like, I think that something maybe really actually deeper is kind of going on, and I may need a little bit more help. We talked a little bit off camera about places that can provide some help, and maybe some not so smart places. Would you maybe care to speak into that a little bit? What are some areas that, like, how can we think well about getting help?
Yes. So the internet can be very helpful. It can also be a terrible place to look up stuff. Just because it's on Google doesn't mean it's true.
Oh, say that again. Yeah.
No, you can find some really helpful things on the internet. There's the suicide prevention hotline is just a great resource to call people. I think they have a texting option now, even, that you can, if you just need to talk, you can call them, you can text them. And they also just have great information on their website as well. So places like that, like, there are websites that are incredibly helpful. Just looking up, you have to be careful looking up specifically like anxiety and depression things, because that's where you can go down a rabbit hole and then find things that are not helpful, or find things that are not even true or accurate of what's really going on. But honestly, just talk to someone is always my go-to of like, even if you feel like it's the smallest pebble and that it's not a big deal, but like I'm kind of struggling with it, like just talk to someone. Like
Yeah.
let someone know something is going on. You're noticing something different. Then that can lead to conversations, that can lead to maybe you do need more, maybe therapy or reaching out to something, your support groups and different things like that. But that's the first step, to let someone know, because if you don't let anyone know, no one knows, because we're
Right.
great at hiding it.
Right, absolutely.
Like even as adults, like we are really great at hiding what's really going on inside. So if you don't ask for help, or if you don't talk to a friend or a parent, or a friend's parent or a teacher, or just some adult, like, or friends and adults, but somebody that you can at least say like, hey, I'm not feeling okay,
Right.
what like let's talk it through, and then that can lead to a lot of different resources.
Yeah. You are a Christian,
Mm-hmm.
someone who follows Jesus.
Yeah.
And we have been trying to approach this conversation from a pretty holistic standpoint, which is, yes, there are some practical things that we can do that aren't necessarily faith related.
Yeah.
But I think a huge piece of mental health and health in general is very spiritual in nature as well.
Yeah.
Would you maybe be able to share a little bit about the role you see that faith plays into this whole thing?
Yeah.
And it's kind of open-ended,
Yeah.
but I'm curious.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that I can give you all the, as a therapist, I can give you all the coping skills in the world, but that's going to work on like this little part of it. There's so much more than that. Having that faith with God for myself personally has been huge, of just knowing that he's going to take care of it. But going to him, I have to take that to him. And one struggle that I've seen with teenagers is that I'm feeling anxious, so that means I'm not obeying God. That because I'm experiencing anxiety or depression, either one, that means I'm not obeying God, and that is not true. And then there's shame connected to that, right?
Right,
Of like, well, now I'm just a terrible Christian. Like what? So there's
That's
this
like
vicious
snowballs
cycle, yeah,
so
and then
rapidly,
it just
right.
keeps going, and then we get mad, like you had said in your videos before, and then now I'm mad at God, and so then it just snowballs and continues from there. And so I think anyone, but especially teenagers and middle schoolers, realize you can have feelings. We do have feelings. You're allowed to have feelings. What we do with that is our responsibility, and how we take that to God, and how we handle that from that point forward. But God doesn't, he's not mad at us. He's not punishing us for having feelings. There should not be a shame piece connected with that it's okay to be anxious. It's okay to feel depressed. It's okay to have these feelings. It's just what we do with it in terms of taking it to him in prayer, seeking help, seeking counsel from mentors, from people that can put that word back into us when we need it, when we're mad at God, when we feel like we've strayed from God, reaching out to the right people to bring us back to him, because he always provides no matter where we're at. But I think that's the most important piece, is that you're not disobeying God just because you feel these feelings.
Right, yeah. So what I'm getting from you is two things, which is the honesty piece is huge.
Yeah.
We got to be honest with where we're at, with other people, with God. If we're not honest, we put on the facade, the front, the fake, around other people, around God. And we know that if we're not honest, people can't help us, right? And God obviously is
God
big
knows.
enough to handle what we're going through, but then also the responsibility piece. God has given us feelings. He's given us intuition. He's given us all these things to be able to understand and try to figure out what's going on. He's given us other people. But also there is some responsibility on our end to be wise in the way that we respond, to be wise in where we find counsel and where we find guidance and direction. And as we've talked a little bit about, there's a lot of bad advice, a lot of bad wisdom, right? That I think probably tries to take out all the responsibility off of us,
absolutely.
maybe, right? Which, a lot of things that we see is, very much you're a victim to this, you're a slave to this, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's almost how that's, posed, which means you're not really responsible for it, and you're just nothing you can do, right?
But that's when it becomes part of your identity, and that's where the enemy thrives the most, is when you fall into that mindset, and that's where the enemy is going to keep you, very much so. And he wants you to feel shameful for having these feelings and these thoughts and everything that's going on, and we can't let him thrive in that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think ultimately, if we want to be people who are able to overcome
Yep.
some of these challenges. It's certainly possible to do so,
Very much.
but we're going to have to respond and deal with these things in ways that the world
Yes.
doesn't.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of people dealing with these things who the things that they're trying, the advice that they've been given, it's not working, it's
Right.
not helping.
Yeah.
And so if we want to be able to respond differently and live differently, we got to approach some of these things differently.
Absolutely.
And this has been so helpful so far. Before we kind of wrap up, I just want to know, is there any final thoughts, final pieces of wisdom or encouragement that you want to share? And then I'll have one more question sort of at the end. But anything that we haven't covered yet that you think is just really important to be a part of the conversation?
Yeah, I think just remembering this is a season. This too shall pass. Because there is light at the end of the tunnel when you talk to someone, when you get help, even when you don't. Like I know things are really, really rough, but things are going to get better eventually.
Yeah.
This is not who you are. This is not part of you. You are a child of God, and you are having these struggles of anxiety and depression and stress and being a teenager and being a middle schooler, but that is not who you are.
Yeah.
And you are loved so much by our Lord, and He's going to provide for you, and but there's hope. There's always hope at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Always.
If there was a way that you could speak just directly to our students about either like a bad piece of advice or something that they just need to really be paying attention to and kind of just get that like therapist mode on and be like, hey, there's something I need to tell you about, and this is just so important. It's not because I'm mad at you, but it's because I love you. What would that thing be?
That would be to face it head on, talk openly about it, be direct, talk about suicide, talk about, if your friends are talking about suicide, like listen to them. Don't be scared of those conversations. Don't be scared of people struggling with self-harm, and to help them by letting somebody else know what's going on. But I would say face it straight on, that the enemy is going to keep you in this place where it's easy to be anxious and depressed, but facing it straightforward, as hard as it is, it's going to suck. It's going to be hard.
Right.
It's going to be a lot of work, but you got to face it straight on.
Yeah.
And be honest with all of it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Randy, thank you so much for
thank
being here and
you.
being a part of this. I know this is going to bless a lot of people. I know it's going to be very helpful for a lot of students. Our squad, thank you guys for being here tonight. Thanks for tuning in. We want you to know you're not alone. There is hope. And if you feel like someone is going to benefit from this video, or if you want to go back and watch it later, it's available on Instagram and YouTube. Please share it with somebody. We love you guys so much. See ya.